Welcome to Local History, Legends, and Lore. I'm Julie Lugo, Cerra, your host, and today our guest is Stan Abrams. Stan is an award-winning restaurant kitchen designer whose early memories of the Culver City area include working with his dad, delivering produce to a local studio, and playing in the Baldwin Hills. Welcome, Stan.
Thank you, Julie.
It's nice to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your early history.
Well, I was born in Fresno, California, and my father moved to Culver City when I was about 2, I think. It's pretty hard to remember back that far, but he had a store on Washington Boulevard across from what's now Helm's Bakery.
Oh, it was actually in the city?
Yes. It was
okay, I think we have a photo of that, of the early store. There it is.
Very small produce and fruit store.
And his name was?
Myron Abrams.
I see.
During those tough years, he was a very hard-working man, and he actually had 3 businesses. My mother ran this store. My father was a general building contractor, and he would deliver produce to some of the leading Los Angeles restaurants and Culver City restaurants.
Okay. And did you help him with that?
Well, I helped him. When I was about, I think about 4, my father delivered produce to Hal Roach Studio, and he used to put produce on a little wagon that I had, you know, a child's wagon with four-wheel, and I used to pull that over to the studio to the commissary.
Nice.
One day, they were shooting a film, and they had a big group of young children out there, and they saw me and whisked me into the crowd to be part of the shots they were taking. And they gave me a coin after that. I can't recall whether it was a nickel or a dime or a quarter.
So you didn't have enough to join SAG at that point, probably.
No.
Huh? And so where did you play around here, generally speaking?
Well, Culver City was my playground. I remember Bologna Creek was part of the playground. We had a tree with a swing hanging on ropes out of the tree, and in those days, I guess the water was pretty clear because we used to fall in the water.
And where was the tree? Where was that located approximately? Was that on Higuera or?
It's on where the baseball diamond is in the park.
Oh. Like at Jefferson.
Yes, Jefferson.
Oh, okay.
And the Baldwin Hills was a playground. The 57, below the 57, we called it Pollywog Pond. Okay,
we have a photo of that right now. That's your 57, and why was that up there?
That's Heinz, I think Heinz 57 varieties.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know that. So that would have been way back in, about what year, do you think?
Oh, in the late 20s and early 30s.
Okay, and it was in the Baldwin Hills that they actually had an Olympic Village in 32, I think, up in that area.
I don't recall the village, but we used to ride our bicycles up to the foot of the hills there and then climb all over those hills. And there were some caves back in the hills that not many people have ever talked about. We used to crawl back in those caves. If I knew a child of mine was doing that today, I'd probably have a fit because they're very narrow passageways. But one of my friends had a small alligator that his parents brought back from New Orleans, from the
a small alligator.
Yeah, and we used to get big tadpoles in the ponds that would be below the 57. They're huge ponds.
Wow.
And the tadpoles were about as big as your thumb, and we used to gather the tadpoles off to feed the alligator.
Oh my gosh!
And then we hiked all over those hills.
And what happened to the alligator? Did it stay?
The alligator got out of its pen in the pool, and it was gone for no one heard of maybe 6 months. And there was a hissing under a house, and the police came and found that the alligator was under the house. And I guess they brought the animal authorities there who took the alligator out. And I remember him telling my friend that he couldn't have the alligator anymore, that it was too big. And he was very unhappy. And they said, well, why don't you have a purse made for your mother. That made him unhappier. Yeah.
Oh. The caves, I think, may have been part of the reason that that rancho was named that way. Culver City was carved from basically two ranchos, Rancho La Bayona, and the other one was Rancho Rincón de los Bueyes, which means cattle corner. And it was supposedly up against the Baldwin Hills that they had shelter, which may have been the caves, and they were able to keep the animals, the livestock. So that you may have been over on Rancho Rincón de los Bueyes, enjoying the amenities there. So now tell me about delivering produce in Culver City. You delivered to the Hal Roach Studios.
Well, my father delivered produce, I think, to almost every one of the large restaurants in Culver City, the Cotton Club and across from, I think, La Cienega in Washington was a restaurant called the Checker Club.
Right.
And in Los Angeles, some of the leading restaurants in Los Angeles. And
I think we have a picture of Hal Roach Studios. Maybe we can bring that up. Is that what you remember?
Yes.
Where was the commissary? Was it in the back?
In that building somewhere.
Ah, okay. And that was way down Washington Boulevard towards the east end. It was around National and Washington
National,
Boulevard.
right, National.
There's a marker there today. It's not existing anymore, but there's a marker there today that was placed by the Sons of the Desert in a little parkette there to commemorate.
My father's store was about 100 or 200 yards east of there.
Oh my gosh. And so he delivered to the King's Tropical Inn as well?
Yes, and he did some building at King's Tropical Inn.
I see.
They had some, in the tower there was some either dry rot or termites. I remember we replaced a lot of the timber up there.
Ah.
King's Tropical Inn to me was a wonderful place. I don't think that there was a restaurant that had any more allure than the interior of that restaurant.
Tell us about the inside.
Well, the interior was very theatrically done. It had palm trees, and it was kind of a atmosphere of a jungle with a very fine ceiling that had stars in the ceiling and lights that flashed the ceiling that enhanced the feel of the ceiling. And the restaurant was an exceptional restaurant. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen. In fact, I peeled potatoes there a couple of years.
How fun.
Yeah. The kitchen was immaculate. And as I recall, the cooks were all Filipinos. And when they got delivery of chickens, I remember they'd inspect every single chicken, hold it up to the light and see whether it was a healthy chicken, packed it nice. I think the only other food that was served there besides chicken was one steak and good French fried potatoes and biscuits they made in cast iron biscuit forms. And I think that maybe that my eating a lot of the French fries didn't help my cholesterol.
Well, I can't go back now, I'm afraid. The King's Tropical Inn, unfortunately, went down. It was already not in existence as a restaurant, but it went down in the earthquake in '94. That was so sad because I think it was the only example of Byzantine architecture in the area.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, did you know Mr. King, who owned
it? Oh, yes, doing very well, and his son. After Mr. King passed away, his son ran the restaurant for some years, as I recall.
Okay, and it was John
King?
Was
John
his
King,
name?
correct.
All right, and did he go around and greet the guests, or what kind of a personality did he have?
You know, I don't recall that.
Oh, okay. All right. So now, how did you find an interest in designing kitchens?
Well, I wanted to be an architect, and my father didn't want me to be an architect because in those days architects weren't making much money.
Oh, golly.
And so I went to UCLA and then SC School of Engineering to take mechanical engineering. I was offered a job foolishly before I graduated, to join a program by Frigidaire Corporation to train refrigerant engineers. So I joined that program, and that led to designing some things for restaurants, refrigeration for restaurants, and that led to designing kitchens for restaurants and bars and whatever.
What was the first restaurant you designed for?
I think the first thing I did was Wofford Heights, California, where it's now part of a lake. Well, Mr. Wofford, Mr. Uford came to Los Angeles to buy equipment for a kitchen they were going to put in. The kitchen was to feed the people building a new dam, a new reservoir.
Oh.
The restaurant today, the kitchen, I think today is an Elks Club or something. Anyhow,
So it's still there?
Yeah, that's the first thing I ever did. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then you were instrumental in designing for ships, as I recall.
Well, Matt Shipman, the person responsible for ships, the owner.
And there's a picture of it on the corner of Overland and Washington.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it no longer exists as a ship's.
Matt Shipman was a partner, one of 4, in the Biff's and Tiny Nailers restaurants.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, and he was the person that we dealt with. We didn't deal with, I knew the other men, there were 4, but Matt Shipman was responsible for the design of the restaurants. And Matt was the most particular man I've ever known in the business as far as the study of time and motion and his desire to cut the problems down to bare minimums. I don't think I've known any other man that even touched his knowledge of time and motion. He left the Biffs and Tiny Nailers and started ships. And both the Biffs, Tiny Nailers, and ships were probably admired by more people in this country and even abroad than I think any other chain of that type of restaurant. If equipment was good enough for Matt Shipman, it was good enough for them.
Oh my gosh.
And Matt gave more to the restaurant industry, I believe, than any other man that I've ever known. Matt was invited by several restaurateurs around the country to come and help them or give them ideas, including Willard, Marriott, and Matt took me along with him in some of those tours and meetings. Matt was well respected.
When was ships built? Do you remember?
In the early or mid-50s.
Okay, I remember we used to go there a lot, and we loved it because I think the kids especially loved it because of the toasters.
Toasters, yeah. they were a problem because they didn't last too long, but he had a lot of spares. And
did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a wonderful family place.
Yeah.
That really was. We enjoyed it a lot. So then, what other formidable projects did you work on that you especially enjoyed?
Well, I did most everything for Douglas Aircraft for years. And that was a challenge, and I met Donald Douglas Sr. In fact, the matter is I flew in there in service one time, and we needed a place to wash up, and he gave us his private quarters and gave us a car to use for that evening. We were there all that evening, and little did I know that later I would do a restaurant for him.
Oh my gosh!
In fact, I did the kitchen for his private dining room.
Did you?
And
where was that located?
In his office at the airport.
Okay. And Filmland.
Well, Filmland, I was brought in by the architects, and
this is the Filmland Center, which was built in the mid-'80s, and it was a redevelopment agency project in Culver City.
And the target there was to create a restaurant that had some of that furthered the atmosphere of the motion picture industry. So the kitchen became a show kitchen.
So this is the atrium of the building, which is under something like 10,000 square feet of glass, as I recall.
Yes, and they had a restaurant adjacent to the kitchen, which was a bar and restaurant, which was separate of that feeding in that area. That kitchen won first place in the National Design Contest
It's the bakery section.
Yeah. I wasn't really too pleased with the appearance of the exhibition equipment.
Really? And that's the delicatessen section. That's now in Sony Pictures Plaza and actually still exists as.
You've seen it recently, have you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I think we might have a few other pictures. You might want to describe them.
That's the special kitchen, the kitchen for the restaurant.
That was built as L'Montage, as I recall.
Correct. It did not catch on that well. It was not that successful. That's a unique dishwashing assembly for the restaurant and the cafeteria.
And what was unique about that?
Well, we call it a flight type machine. It's a big machine where you don't use any racks. The silverware is put in pegs on a moving conveyor. And that's the last word in dishwashing equipment.
Okay.
Warewashing.
Okay. And so now you've met a number of very famous people throughout your experience in designing kitchens. Tell me about Howard Hughes. I think you had some stories about him.
Yes. When the Spruce Goose was being planned, I think Hughes made a deal with Kaiser Corporation to build the hangars where the airplane would be built, and they needed temporary offices, so they took over the Culver City Hotel and built offices on the second floor. I helped get those offices in shape, and something happened in that partnership, and it dissolved. That's the last I know of it.
But there was actually an office there, which was
it was the Kaiser Hughes office. And then later, when I started this business with Interstate Restaurant Supply Company, we designed the new kitchen for the aircraft, for the plant. Mm-hmm. The kitchen, I think, for the plant was probably built before the war or during the war, when materials were scarce. So consequently, the sinks were made of galvanized, and the kitchen equipment was not too modern. So they decided to build a new cafeteria, and I think that building is still there, as a matter of fact.
Yes, I think it is. I think they're using it for movie production, in fact. And
we were presenting the plan for the new cafeteria to Mr. Hughes' staff, and we were sitting at a picnic table, an old-fashioned picnic table, with his staff, and a person was walking around behind us, and that person said, "Where's the kitchen?" And with that, his aide said, "Gentlemen, this is Mr. Hughes." And this first time that I'd ever met him. And he said, "Where's the kitchen?" And we pointed it out. And he said, "Well, I want it at the other end of the building." And I think I said to him, "Mr. Hughes, the reason we have it where we have it is it puts the dining area closest to all the employees." His answer was that he didn't care that he had a studio at the other end, that he spent a lot of time in the evenings there, and he liked to come down and rob the refrigerator. So he wanted the kitchen put down at the other end, and that's what we did.
I guess you would do it, but Howard Hughes wanted. That makes sense to me. That's great. So how big a kitchen was it?
That's a pretty good sized kitchen. That I don't know how many, I forget how many people that cafeteria. But it was a type of kitchen that's used in plant feeding.
That's great. What project are you most proud of that you worked on?
Well, I think probably Filmland and some of the Douglas aircraft, and then I had a contract with Hyatt Hotels for 5 years, vice president of design. So I think I was responsible for a big number of the Hyatt Hotels in the United States, and some in Hawaii.
So you traveled all across the country?
Yeah, we had a client in Japan, the Royal Foods, the second largest restaurant company in Japan. I did their first restaurants for them. And Vips in Mexico, part of Cifra, that eventually brought Walmart to Mexico.
Really?
And their restaurant chain today, I understand, is the largest restaurant chain in all of Latin America.
Oh my gosh.
And interesting, I think their restaurants are as good or maybe even better than ours here now.
Really? You
Yeah.
think that's because of the kitchens?
No, I think that they're training of their people and
Really?
yeah.
So what other memories of Culver City would you like to share?
Oh, the studio. We used to jump over the fence, and you know where the gates for the King Kong movie.
The back lot of what is now the Culver Studios,
I think, yeah.
which was INSA's second studio.
There was a street in there. We used to play in there, and it was full of snakes and rabbits and.
It was full of snakes and rabbits.
Yeah, and we used it as kind of a playground. Baldwin Hills was mainly our playground, though. We just hiked all over the Baldwin Hills.
Do you remember the sand in the Baldwin Hills in that area?
Sand.
And the fort that was up there?
No, did not.
Okay. Yeah, that was an amazing area. I remember when they were leveling it for the fields initially. Now it's Culver City Park. Our portion of it, I guess, is Culver City Park, and it's 40 acres and it butts up to county territory.
Well, the proposed new park for Baldwin Hills, I think, would be just fantastic if it goes through like they've been talking.
Mm-hmm.
Because where else in this area can you have a park with the views you could gain from top of Baldwin Hills towards downtown Los Angeles and the mountains and out to the sea?
What would you like to see there?
Well, there's a beautiful park planned. I've been told the park should be better than New York and San Francisco.
Central Park.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a lot of amenities they can have there. They're talking about a golf course.
Yes, golf course and all the park amenities have been proposed.
That's great. I think we all need to have some open space and all that.
Well, another thing, the plan is to create a bridge-like over La Cienega, not so that animals can go back and forth, the wildlife can go back and forth. What's happened through the years is that the wildlife has been concentrated in small areas, and consequently they've become diseased and have disappeared or gone down in numbers. If the animals can have access to more area, the whole park,
mm-hmm.
then I believe that it is believed that it'll help the wildlife.
Now, as I recall, you work on a project you're quite a fisherman, and you work on a project with fish. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Project with fish.
That you educate children?
Oh, that's a program called Trout in the Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful program. It's an international program, or national program. We put a aquarium in third and fourth grade classes. Mm-hmm. We go to Fish and Game and get eggs and bring the eggs and put in the aquarium, and the children watch those eggs hatch. And it's a real great program. They have tests, and then the school has been busing the children to a local stream where we release the fry, and children see that. We demonstrate fly casting, and the children are asked to pick up trash. It's amazing how these young kids catch on to the protection of the environment. So the program is really good for the future.
And how did you get involved in that?
Belonging to a local fly fishing club.
Nice.
Wilderness Fly Fishers in Santa Monica.
And how often do you go fishing?
Well, these days, at my age, I go maybe 3 or 4 times a year, but I used to go many times more often than that.
You fished in the creek?
Yes.
And what did you catch?
Trout.
Trout. There were trout in the creek.
Well, in all of our local, in our foothills, San Gabriel Mountains, the streams, most all of them had trout. And,
I remember my grandfather used to cook trout for breakfast when we'd go up north.
Today we release them. We call catch and release.
Ah.
And we try and teach the children to do that.
That's great. So you show them how to cast?
Yes.
And then you show them how to release.
We show them, we crush the barbs down on the hooks, so the hooks are easy to get out, and we show them how to gingerly handle the fish, so they hopefully will not be harmed.
That was always the trouble I had, was getting the hook out of the fish's mouth.
Well,
That's...
best way is leave the fish in the water and try and take the hook out.
Oh, you do it in the water?
If possible.
I see. Okay, well, that probably,
Yeah.
That's a good hint.
Yeah.
So your family, you raised your family in Culver City, and you still live nearby?
Live just a few blocks north of the Culver City, West LA line, yes.
Uh-huh.
I've lived in Culver City 3 times in my life.
Three times?
3 different times.
Okay. And when you were a little boy, didn't you live right near the King's Tropical Inn?
Yes. On Washington, like I said, Washington Boulevard, that's National Boulevard, Washington National.
Okay, in that area?
Yeah.
And then you lived?
Moved to Cloverdale, which was east, just before Redondo.
Okay.
That's just north of Culver City, or east of Culver City, a short ways.
Okay, and then you came back?
Moved back to Culver City, and with my folks until I went into service in 1942, and then came back, and married, and moved back to Culver City again.
Well, we're glad you're still around, and I really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to talk to us a little bit about your interesting history here. I think designing kitchens is something that is an amazing talent, and obviously you've done a very good job of it, being an award-winning designer. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you'll come back and visit us sometime.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan Abrams.